MySpace. Well, there's another Live Cure Die podcast without my bald friend Kevin. He is trying to kill an elephant. I think right now he's in Mozambique. He's in Africa. He'll be there for a bit. He came home for like 3 weeks and said, I'm going back to Africa. So we're running the show without him. This time we have Donnie and Walter from Walter Sobchak Security or Sobchak Security LLC. You guys can say your names if you want to, but Donnie and Walter are pretty good.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, me too. If you know my name, then you're supposed to.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Otherwise, you get to enjoy the alias. But
yeah, like you said, people talk to you as Donnie in public places.
It's cool.
Yeah. Well, you guys are from the Northwest, basically the opposite of here, and you made the trip. You're looking at some Revolutionary War monuments and kind of stumbled your way in here.
Yeah. Walter's a big history buff, so he's a student of the Revolutionary War, and we were just happened to be out here looking at various sites around Boston and thought we'd swing by Q.
Yeah, learning about guerrilla warfare.
Some metal detecting for musket balls and
yeah. I saw you guys digging in a cemetery, which is crazy, but I guess it's just for that.
We don't have to talk about that.
Yeah. So I guess for those who don't know about Walter Sobchak Security, can you give a little bit of a background or a history on this this anomaly?
I'm a huge Big Lebowski fan, obviously. It goes without saying. I've watched it 100 times. I watched it like 8 times in one day once. I was in Berlin, Germany for work doing video stuff, and I was staying at this hotel that had it playing on repeat. That was the one thing they had playing on repeat, like on Channel Zero.
Yeah.
And I stayed up and watched the sunrise, went clubbing, kind of did what you do when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Right, yeah.
And was just insanely hungover and jet lagged. And I watched The Big Lebowski 8 times in one day just because I couldn't sleep. So I was just on running it back. But how that pertains to Walter Sobchak Security LLC is just, I thought, Walter is my favorite character. And I love, I grew up shooting and hunting. And, I just thought it was so funny in the age of like the super tactical, cool guy to have like a brand based around a fictitious business that's not remotely fucking cool, which would be having a security company, in a strip mall.
Like a mall cop.
Yeah, being like a mall cop where like how you make money is like surveilling people that are on insurance claims.
Yeah.
And during my first job, one of the guys I worked with was this graphic designer. And before he was a graphic designer, he worked for a private insurance or a security company and would just do stakeouts. Yeah. And he was like the funniest vibe. Like, the guy has like a false workers' comp case, and he like surveil him in a van for a long time, or like divorced wife shit.
Yeah.
And so I thought that would be super funny for a brand. And I just started as a joke pretty much, just like posting the stuff, the guns I was into, and kind of doing, posting the guns that I'm into, and, like as a fun outlet, as a total fucking joke. And it just kind of slowly started growing, and it turns out there's a lot of other people that thought that was funny. And, the kind of shooting that I'm into, and that or that Donnie's into.
Oh,
correction.
Shit.
Damn, bro, you leaked me?
He'll believe it.
Yeah.
He'll believe it.
It's kind of like extending the range of, and like the thing about Walter is it's like some of it's funny and it's a joke, but also some of it is relevant and kind of is informed by practicality or what we think is practical. 100%. And this fantasy that everyone's going to be doing CQB if Red Dawn pops off, dude, if the frickin' commies are parachuting into recess, like you're not going to be doing CQBs. Sorry, no one does. Like that, from a statistical standpoint, CQB has a 30% or even higher casualty rate. So it's like,
on a good day.
On a good day, if you do that, that's your job
with that team of guys that you do it every day.
Yeah. On super high standards. So this like kind of fantasy of that is, it's like Like, dude, no, that's not how that shit would work. If you wanted to stay alive, you would do something differently. And Walter is kind of like an exercise in like thinking about that. It's like, okay, well, what? And like we want to do shooting that's kind of beyond the range that most people shoot, but within the envelope of what you can actually hit with an AR-15.
And within the means of a regular person.
And within the means of a regular person that doesn't have a ton of gear, or like, a bunch of fancy, expensive shit. So that's kind of like what we make products for, based on like passive ranging, knowing your dope, just knowing what your rifle does, kind of like basic stuff that in the age of like technological solutions to old problems gets lost in the sauce. But if you know the fundamentals, then you can do that. So
yeah, I think when you guys post, it makes those fundamentals a little more fun, because like a majority, and I mean, we deal with it here at Q with some of our, sometimes people will email and they're not necessarily getting the performance they think they should be getting, or this or that out of their gun. And not to kind of nag on anyone, but it's like a lot of the people don't have the fundamentals down and they don't know the dope of their gun. Like the things that we think because we shoot so much, like, oh, that goes unsaid. Like everyone, you learn the dope and you proof out your dope. A lot of people just don't do that. They go to because they don't necessarily have the means. They go to their 100-yard range, they shoot their 100 yards, and then they think like, oh, I have a ballistic calculator, it'll be fine. Like,
yeah. And if you have to rely on like your phone or something that has batteries or whatever, like for an AR, like I think our homework sticker is super cool.
Absolutely.
I've used it a ton. I doped my 16-inch gun. I had a scope that broke. I got a new one in, and then like a week later, I took a carbine course, so I zeroed it.
Yeah.
I took it to the carbine course, and I took that gun out to 1,100 yards, like using the homework.
Right.
And nothing else. I mean, obviously at 1,100, like with 5.56, you're lobbing it.
Yeah.
But it was consistent out to like 700 or 800.
Right.
And like the homework was fairly close.
Yeah.
And that's what it's for, really, is like getting people close, and you don't need all this super expensive stuff to go shoot.
Nice
like
to have,
distance or precision. It's nice to have for sure, but
not only that, it's just fun as fuck to go shoot targets like that.
Yeah, like
and I just got to the
hang
point
time.
where I was shooting USPSA and traveling and competing for that, and I was just like, man, like spending my weekends taking targets sucks ass.
Yeah.
Regardless of how fun it is to be like, all right, cool, like let's shoot. But when you're out shooting in ring and steel out far, especially in wind, it's insanely satisfying. And, I think that I think from a practical perspective, like getting people trained up to be able to shoot like that makes a ton of sense from like, it's far more, that skill is far more useful than knowing how to like pie a door.
Yeah.
For most people. And then also that it's like super applicable to hunting, which I think I really am a strong proponent of getting people into hunting because, you're closer to your food source from a happiness perspective. Like it's literally something that we evolved to do for millions of years. And it's, it's cliche to say, but like once you do it, you're like, oh damn, like, okay, that's going to be a part of my life for a long time. And then on top of that, it's just super fun going out with your boys and ringing the steel.
And like, I don't know if you're not familiar with our page, like you'll notice like those places that we shoot at, they're typically like not at a flat range.
Right. Yeah.
We're out in the woods. We're out in the desert. Like we're shooting off stumps.
Real world. Yeah.
We're shooting off, like we have tripods. We use tripods sometimes. We don't always use tripods. It's, I feel like the business is just kind of like evolved with us, like getting more experienced about how to shoot. And I'm not on here as like some expert on marksmanship or like any of that, but I'm a student just like everybody else. And I learn stuff and I take things that I like and throw away what I don't. And you're kind of the products that we make or stuff that we thought's been helpful.
You're actively learning and passing on what you're learning as well. And I think that's a big thing. You're not gatekeeping, you're sharing what is working and what's real.
Yeah. Totally. And I think, the gun industry, shooting, hunting, regardless of what it is, there's a lot of dogma in place with anything, and Walter in a lot of senses is like poking fun at that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're like into fudge shit from like a
Right.
sensibility perspective. Like that shit, I think it's super funny. And on top of that, it's also like, like trying to take the piss out of things. Like you can learn and laugh at the same time
100%.
and not have everything be like, this is fucking train how you fight. Like, blah, 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 blah. It's
Yeah.
like, dude, okay. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that goes back to like that point about the fundamentals. Like they can be boring.
Yeah.
But adding that sort of entertainment and making it fun and attainable for every single person. Like you don't have to have a membership at your local flat range. You don't have to have all this gear.
Get outside, dude.
Yeah. Just go do it and
Yeah.
have fun with while you're
yeah.
doing
And
it.
it's definitely, I mean, I understand, we're out here on the East Coast. And where we live in the West Coast, there's just so much public land that it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah,
so
we don't have that.
We have the option to just go. Like, I don't belong to a range, never
Right.
have. I have a bunch of steel targets that I keep in my truck, and we go find places to camp and set them up and ring the gong. So I think it is kind of, I want to be cognizant of the fact that a lot of people don't have options and availability for that, but you can still go on trips and go camping.
Yeah, and there's also like we haven't talked about it a ton, and I don't necessarily know if I've seen it on your page a ton. I know it might start becoming a thing, but there are ways to simulate those ranges. You can use 22s, you can use air guns, like
Yeah,
high
we
quality air
talked about
guns.
that.
Can
Yeah.
dry fire.
Yeah, dry fire is huge.
Yeah. Also, like one of the things, I mean, if let's say you're a student of long range shooting, which, or precision shooting, whatever nomenclature you adhere to, but a lot of what you're doing is figuring out ranging.
Yeah.
Because once you figure out what your bullet's doing if you can predict where your bullet's going based off of, ballistics and drop and everything, the most important thing you're doing is figuring out ranging, and you can do that anywhere.
Yeah.
Especially passively, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And
You can also build up different positions. I think that's a big thing. Everyone prones out, lays out. Building up alternative positions is huge.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think doesn't get worked on a lot.
Yeah. Learning how to get support on the gun in like
Yeah.
a bunch of different ways. I think that's super important too.
Even outside of bags, like if you don't, not everyone can go just, times are tough. Not everyone can just go buy a game changer real, like they would use that for gas or whatever, but like understanding how your bone structure works, like setting up, using your own body, using whether you have a sling, XYZ, that kind of stuff. One thing that I think maybe we can probably talk off air about it, but it came to my mind. I shot with Terry Huyen, he was a Navy SEAL for a while. And one thing, James was with us actually, and we have some footage of it that'll eventually come out, but working with a spotter and shooter, there's so much you can do as a two-man team. An example being like Terry was standing, he was higher than me. I was on a bench, but we were engaging a target that I could only see a portion of.
Yeah. over
And there's
the
a
horizon.
feature, right? There's a
Yeah.
feature, and there's just some quick math you can do, especially as a spotter. And it literally feels like magic, like arcing around over this feature and hitting something that you can't see and hitting it in the proper spot. Like, and then doing it as a two-man team, it's cool. And if you and your buddy just go out in the woods and do that every other weekend, like you're going to be light years beyond everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, shooting, long range shoot, it's like, they don't call it fishing. It's not called catching. It's called fishing.
Yeah.
And long range, extended range shooting is definitely one of those things where it's like you are going to miss. So, and a lot of times you can't see your miss, so you rely on your friend or your shooting partner to kind of walk you in. So a lot of it's just like kind of communication shit based like that.
Yeah.
You're more, once you, like, that's another one where obviously you and your buddy that you go with a lot are going to have that connection of like, oh, we understand each other. But that's easier to translate with someone than CQB or something like that. Like way easier to translate with a random person. And I think that's something that kind of gets lost as well. And you're proving, I mean, if anyone goes to your Instagram page or signs up for your newsletter, I think the first gun that you posted on there was either a B14 or a Ruger American or something.
Yeah.
One of those. Like
other than an AR-15.
Right. Yeah.
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 So I think people, when they think of like long range, I think they initially think of like the PRS guns or the bench rest guns and stuff like that. And you don't need that.
No, I mean, modern rifle manufacturing is pretty amazing, especially when combining that with good accessible bullets. It's just, you know, it used to be if you're like, my gun's sub-MOA, it's like, damn, that's a big
Right.
deal. But
Now we're
nowadays
spoiled.
it's not. Yeah. And you can go to Cabela's or a big box store and for $600 get a rifle that's sub-MOA, you know, which is bananas.
Yeah. And you can do so much with that in your learning process.
You can do a ton. Yeah. I mean, and like that rifle is not going to be perfect for everything. It's going to, you know, it's probably, depending on which one you get, barrel is probably too light. The profile is really light, so it's not like you're going to be belly shooting all day and the barrel's going to get too hot. But, you know, you can learn a ton from that. And you can also learn a ton shooting 5.56 too.
Yeah.
Like I think
we were just talking about that outside.
I would really recommend, because, you know, 5.5, like let's say if you're shooting roughly 6.5 Creedmoor, your wind holds are going to be a quarter of what 5.56 is.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that is, you know, it's also really, it's cheaper, especially now with all the 77 grain match ammo that you can get, like what AAC is making, which isn't fantastic ammo for the record, but it's pretty damn good. And for the price, it's like really good. So you can really learn a lot with that. And I think that, you know, if your goal is to hit things, which it should be, like you can kind of think about a solution it's different than what you'd see on the gram.
Right.
That most people are like, oh man, I got like, this is the scope that I run because I saw people running it. It's like, well, those people are trying to do something very specific with their rifle.
Yeah.
Those people are the equivalent of Olympic athletes.
Yeah.
And I don't see you wearing fucking those, you know, like sprinting suits either.
And they have to buy certain stuff.
Yeah, they
Right.
have to use certain stuff, you know.
And those are the opinions that they formed on those systems. They only formed it because that's just what they were given.
what they were
didn't have
given,
a
yeah.
choice.
They didn't choose to run 300 Win Mag or this or that. Like they learned to love it.
Yeah.
But that's where they have formed their opinion.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to take away, I have a bunch of friends that, you know, former soft, like I'm not trying to take away anything from that. But I think the reality is that like that pertains way less to what's applicable from like a practical perspective, from a hunting perspective, and definitely from like some form of like, if you believe that the Second Amendment is a counterbalance to tyranny, it's like, I don't know if they're going to tell you what's most applicable because that's not their job.
No, yeah.
Which isn't a bad thing, but it's all about perspective, obviously.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people think like the hunting aspect is one thing because the end goal is to kill something. But this figurative or this theoretical like shit hits the fan or like fall of civilization, Red Dawn scenario, like your goal might not be to like, if anything, it's probably to not shoot your gun. Like knowing how to do it practically is important.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
But you're not
Bad day.
that you don't just turn into this guy you're now the Punisher. You're gonna go just try to fucking kill everyone.
It's a fucking
Like
fantasy.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, it's all like you could be as prepared as you want. You could have all the food storage, all the water, all the guns, all the ammo. But like, I think one of the most important things that people don't talk about is like decision making. Like, how do you think on your feet? So
yeah, let's break contact. Like,
well, I mean, not even like tactics wise or any of that, but just like people being level headed. I don't know. That's or like grounded or whatever you want to call it, spiritually fit, whatever.
Yeah.
But like being resilient is important, and I think there's a lot of people that are really quick to tell you like one thing or the other, and not like, well, maybe this, maybe that.
yeah, there's a lot of shit.
Those are the people that I like to follow in the shooting sports. Is like, depending on what you're doing, here's a way. Here's one way.
Right.
It's not the way. It's a way.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, there's a lot of shit that could compound before you ever even need to start thinking about a gun. Like, and that, like you're saying, that being grounded, that being able to think on your feet, like you're going to encounter a lot of shit that has nothing to do with shooting a gun.
Yeah.
And being able to utilize that is important. But, I guess like we've off air kind of explained, like, you know, there's I would put you in an educational, it's entertainment, but it's also an educational kind of a box.
Yeah.
And I think that for a long time, when anyone were receiving this education, especially online, obviously courses, whatever, but online, it came from a very serious and professional and cool guy, tactical point of view. And I think you kind of self-described it as we're a little more redneck than that.
Well,
and
yeah, I mean, like, first of all, like we don't have any other option, you know what I mean?
Right.
We're learning and experiencing in our own way. And we're just sharing that with people. Like, we don't have any fucking fancy letters or like plaques or whatever you want to call it, like, to back it up. But we're sharing information on something that we like to do with other people that like to do it too. So
yeah. And I think
why not be relaxed about it?
Right. And that aspect I think is cool. It's relatable to the average person.
It can also be fun. You know?
Exactly.
Like don't take yourself so fucking seriously.
Yeah. I think that's a thing that, and I mean, I've talked about it. I think I talked about it specifically with Jack from Guerrilla Tactical when he was here, but Kevin is like kind of the, yes, exactly. Yeah. Kevin and his peers, his direct peers are kind of the old guard of what is the current gun industry. He's been doing it for this is his 32nd or 33rd year in the industry. And his peers are similar to that. And it's like that time and that generation, I guess, of the gun industry has been a certain way, very serious, it's basically, it was created through the GWAT. Right. Yeah. Right. It's created through the GWAT. And I think my goal and the list of people that I'd like to have on this podcast is this kind of newer generation of going through, and I don't mean like you just discovered shooting, but I mean like you're becoming more prolific within the space. And I think it's this younger group of guys, I think, are showcasing that it's okay to smile when you shoot a gun. It's okay to have other hobbies. Like, it can be fun and still be serious and still be important. And we're still learning. And I think that you guys are doing a super good job at kind of intentionally. I know for you, like, it's just a fun thing for you to do. So I know that, like, I don't think you sit down and try to be like, how can I make this educational, but also as entertaining as I can? Like, I think it's whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I want to make stuff that I like watching ultimately as like a creative person. That's what I do for a living outside of Walter. And I think that, like, to me, I've talked about this a bunch, but like, people are drawn to guns for a bunch of different reasons. Like, some people collect stamps, some people collect, and I'm not talking about NFA stamps, but like, that's like,
right. Yeah.
They're like, this is my model airplane thing.
Yeah.
And then other people are like, I'm a fisherman, I'm a tie flyer. I make this, those are the reloaders, and then there's other people. And for me, like, I just didn't really see people talking about guns in the way that I kind of enjoy, and who's someone who has like kind of a diverse background in what I've done professionally. And then also, like, intellectually, it's like, I don't fucking read memoirs on Navy SEALs.
Right.
I like reading Cormac McCarthy, and those are the kind of things and I think, like, thinking about guns in that aspect is funny to me, like, and I think that if you, it's like I intellectualize it, and that's how I'm drawn to guns from a different place, kind of. And I think it's just fucking a funny exercise to be like, get in the mindset of some old Vietnam vet and hear him talk about thermals, applications of thermals and like the modern,
as a like 45 1-2 World Wars kind of guy.
Exactly. Like, from that aspect, like, imagine him driving around wearing all the fucking same Levi's he's had since the 80s, and like,
and that fly fishing vest.
Galco classic holster, you know. Like that, and I'm like, and that shit's just funny to me, which is purely just like an aesthetic kind of a sensibility where it's like, that shit is hysterical.
Yeah.
I feel like both I like got into
who?
Yeah, damn. I pay back, I guess.
Yeah, we'll bleep it.
Yeah, we'll bleep it. We both got into like the old school gun content too, like. We were like watching
Nothing Fancy.
Yeah, like Nothing Fancy and like Hickok and like before there was like quad nods and like it was clip-ons.
No one had them.
No one had that shit. I was watching like Nothing Fancy and this like, this cool pump shotgun is like really sweet and it's cheap, but I was also like 19 and broke.
Yeah.
So I would go and buy that.
Maverick,
you know what I mean? Yeah. And like I was
a mag light taped to it or something.
Yeah, just shooting like shit and like not knowing what I was doing, but that was kind of where I entered like the space of content that people created.
I mean, I think Nothing Fancy does not get enough respect. He's clearly a fucking nut.
Yeah.
And I have this whole like idea of like developing this lore that Walter and Nut and Fancy were friends, but they had like a falling out because they were swingers or something like that, which is like totally fucking fictitious. You know?
Yeah.
But I think he is clearly a super smart guy.
100%.
And like his kind of breakdown of like first cool and second cool is so funny. I mean, it's incredibly applicable, but it's also just funny as fuck.
Yeah.
And like the POU discussions. I mean, like I can't really watch. We were just out I just went to Idaho.
Bleep.
And oh shit,
It's harder.
Donnie and I were just out in Idaho, and we were driving 6 hours each way. And I'm a fucking Patreon supporter of Nut and Fancy, so I got the shit early.
Yeah.
And we were listening to his political rants on like, yo, everyone's gonna be shooting airsoft guns. I'm in the bunker, and it's just so. I mean, I can't listen to it. I can only do like 20 minutes of it before I turn it off. But I think that kind of his approach to talking about guns is really good from the perspective, like thinking like, hey, how are you actually using this?
Yeah, totally.
As opposed to like fetishizing this object where it's like, and that's how most people do it. And
it's a weird.
That's how a lot of people do it for sure.
And I think, and it's funny now, just kind of like looking at the gun industry and how much YouTube kind of informs it. And in order for people like the media people, like it used to be gun magazines, right? And then that kind of like drove the way that people thought about guns. But then it became YouTube because YouTube is the only social media platform that actually you can make a living doing based off of ad sales, like AdSense, you know? Mm-hmm. But in order to survive on YouTube, you need to make YouTube videos a very specific way that is like the vlog style or like that more. And it's really hard to be creative and make things that actually say shit when you're doing once a week, you know?
Right.
And I think that like Nut and Fancy's style of production is clearly not that successful because it's like in the age. Oh, I just lost audio. All right, there's back. But, it's like that's not cool, that style of production.
Right.
But the way he talks about shit makes a ton of sense, you know? And like when I think like Walter's, we like thinking about like, how are you going to actually use this? You know, like if you approach any gun, and that's one of the reasons why I think Q, like the fix is so sweet. Where it's like, oh, nothing actually, if you actually think about it, you're like, hey, I want a gun that's folds, that's lightweight, that's accurate, that I can change the barrels on. There's nothing that does that and checks the boxes like the Q fix. And I think that like, encouraging people to think about what they actually want their guns to do and then kind of like working back from there. It's like, what kind of capabilities do you actually need realistically?
Yeah, because what are you capable of?
What are you personally capable of shooting? What, like if you're going to use a gun for hunting, it's like, how big of an animal? That's the first question you should ask. How big of an animal do you want to be able to kill? Okay, how far do you want to kill it? And then like you can kind of work, are you going to be hiking it in? Like there's all these kind of, these various like kind of exercises that people should do to think about what they actually need. And like, whether you're talking about AR-15s or like pistols or bolt action rifles, like I think that there is a big kind of, discrepancy between what people actually need and what they're buying. And a lot of that's based off of just kind of like hype or dogma or whatever,
Second cool.
Yeah, second cool. Right. It's not first cool. And that's like Nut and Fancy nailed it. It's like, this is first cool. Like,
functionality.
Accuracy and weight, SAWC compliant, that's fucking, that's first cool,
Yeah.
But, and like, I think funny thing that like, Q as a company, people are like, oh, it's second cool. Like, it's just like hype or whatever. It's like, oh, actually, like the two rifles that and I have weigh 10.5 pounds combined.
Yeah, and one has a can on it.
Yeah.
Like, with a suppressor.
You have accessories on yours.
Like that is like
it's wild.
All my guns weigh more than 10 pounds,
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that kind of goes into it sort of walks into my next question, which was kind of be with that idea of like we're making do with what we have, or like the kind of grassroots sort of it's not even like a zeitgeist that you have, but just like the redneck version of whatever. And like you can use a Ruger American. You kind of answered it a little bit where I think the way that you view guns, you intellectualize it a bit. And I know that function is important to you. And just like curiously, like how do you, looking at all the companies, like what interests you about Q, or what makes you look a little more beyond just like, oh, it's a fucking champagne colored gun. Like what got you interested in Q?
I mean, I've been interested in Q since Q came out, because I think that, like, you know, from a functional perspective, there's so many things like tubeless suppressor design. It's lighter, it's stronger. I don't know. Q was the first person I ever saw, company that I saw doing that back when the Trash Panda and stuff came out. Mm-hmm. From a rifle perspective, I mean, I think if you just like look at the specs of what a fix does, it's unmatched. And I think people misconstrue what it's supposed to do. You know, in the age of like people hunting, or like, you know, YouTube gun people, it's like, oh man, like this Q fix doesn't shoot as well as my like whatever rifle that weighs 22 pounds. And it's like, well, mechanically, actually, it's very accurate, but it's harder to shoot, super accurate, but it's incredible at doing a specific thing. Yeah. And I think that like what has attracted me to Q is the fact that there are problems, there are solutions to problems. And I think, you know, there are problems that I kind of identify with, or I understand. As opposed to a lot of things where it's like a solution looking for a problem. You're like, why in the fuck do you need a gun that does that? Like, I guess like I need a gun that does that, and that, but like doesn't necessarily make sense.
You're also building a whole system too.
Right.
Like there's not a lot of places that are doing cans and guns. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, some people have a gun. They're like, oh, I put this can on this gun and it shot like shit. And I switched the can. Yeah. Shoots really well. But
the companies that do make both, most of the time it's a gun company that starts doing cans. Yeah. And at least that I've seen, when they make that can, they're making it with the thought of like, oh, let's make a can for everyone so they'll just buy our cans. They're not a system. It's two separate entities. Yeah. Whereas like for us, I mean, that's kind of why it's basically the impetus for the fix promo that we're doing, where it's like, if you buy a fix or a mini fix, we want you to run it as a system so badly that we'll just give you the can. Yeah. And I think some people took that as like, we couldn't sell the cans or whatever, or we're screwing you with margins, but it's not that. It's just, obviously the system itself is going to be the
perform the best.
Right.
You're going to get the best performance.
And we're sick.
Like, use it like that.
We had a guy recently who had he bought a 20-inch or 22-inch barrel for his 6.5 and then cut it down, or had it cut down and rethreaded. He had it cut down to 16 and rethreaded for a can or whatever. And he's like, it doesn't shoot as well anymore. And it's like, well, who put the crown on it? Like, whatever. And then he sent it to us and it's like, well, it doesn't group. Like, it's not sub. It's like, that's the same as doing a fucking motor swap on your 911 and going like, and being like, well, it's not as fast as it used to be. Like, fix it. Like, why the fuck would Porsche fix that for you? Like, I don't know. So that was a big thing. We just got sick of people doing dumb shit. And we're like, here, we want you to use it the right way so bad, we'll just give it to you. And I agree with you that I don't think other companies are necessarily doing that. There are a lot of companies, like you made a point to, where they'll make a product with the idea of like, oh, there's all these theoretical problems that this could solve. And it's like, basically all of our products, at least with the exception of the Honey Badger, like the fix specifically, a lot of the features and the reason that it is the way it is Kevin was like, I want a gun that does this. Like, I have a problem and I need you guys to fix it for me.
I mean, the Honey Badger solves a problem. It's it's a replacement to an MP5 SD, which I have and I love. Mm-hmm.
There's two in the gunner right there. Like, Kevin's got a bunch of them.
They're so fun. But yeah, I mean, I think, and also like, I think it's cool when form as like a creative, you know, I just think it's cool when form follows function, and then when that function and that form ultimately ends up being something that is attractive, you know, that is super cool. And I think like talking about the anodizing, for example, it's like the reason why the Honey Badger looks like that, it's because the clear anodizing is the strongest.
Exactly. And it's the same with the plastic that we talked about, like the used condom.
Yeah, and that to me is cool. You're like, oh damn, that's actually like the strongest solution, is to have it like that. Like, that's what happens when you heat treat 17.4 stainless, you know, or like that anodizing is just a product of trying to make it be as strong as possible.
Yeah. without adding anything to it. Yeah. And I mean, we've talked about it a little bit, but like the way that there's this idea that heavy equals strong or equals rugged or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that came from, we see those old skeletonized AR-15s or whatever. Just you take a bunch of, as an afterthought, or like, oh, let's make this lighter. We'll flute the barrel and we'll take some material out of this and skeletonize the grip. And it's like, yeah, that can cause issues. Like the way that we make our products as light as possible is we take weight out of every single part. And it's basically, it's like, it's all killer, no filler. Like everything you need, nothing you don't. And it is the way that it is. And it's the right way. Why do it? Like, it's still just as durable. When people are like, oh, I can't like mortar the gun with this, or like, I can't break off a door handle. Like, first of all, why are you doing that? And secondly, why are you doing it with a gun?
Yeah. Your rifle has other issues.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's strange, but I think it's cool to see that where you're at thought wise. Like I know you're very both of you are very, very function forward. And I mean, you can see here, like you spoke to Ethan, our head engineer. He's the president of engineering. He's been with basically Kevin's whole career. And Ethan couldn't give a shit less about what the gun looks like, but he will give you the most functional gun. He'll give you, if you want the lightest gun, he will make you the lightest gun. If you want the quietest silencer in the world, he'll make it for you. Like there's nothing's free in water world, but
yeah, definitely. And I think one thing that's super cool to me, kind of conceptually about what Q's doing is the exploration of the fast twist stuff. And I think that like, I would be very surprised that in 5 years, everyone isn't doing some form of faster twist barrels, especially on smaller rifles, shorter barrels, because I think like, a big thing that I think about a bunch is just like, hey, how far do I want to shoot? How big of an animal do I want to shoot? Okay, how much barrel do I need?
Right.
And if you work your way back from that, I guarantee you'll find yourself being like, damn, all right, I actually need less barrel than I think I do.
Yeah.
And when you lose velocity, you can increase performance in terms of terminal performance, but also accuracy by increasing twist rate. And I think that based off of advances in bullet design, you can spin bullets a lot faster now than you used to be able to. So to me, like 8.6, like I'm not a giant. I mean, I think subsonic is cool. And I think if you look at it statistically, most people hunt within 150 yards. And, subsonic is fantastic at that. Mm-hmm. But the way that I hunt and in a lot of the ways I shoot, I like to shoot further than that. So, but I want to have a rifle that's small and light because, like, even when I'm target shooting, it's like I'll set up a target and I'll like hike up a hill, Yeah. And it's like, damn, dude, I don't want to bring along my big iron for that. Like, I want like the smallest possible thing that I can hit that target with and still accurately and consistently and still have terminal performance. And just that's where I'm at in terms of what I'm looking for. And that's why a shorter barrel makes a lot of sense, especially in the days of these modern Form 4 wait times where it's like, oh, damn, it's like, it's not a year anymore. It's not 6 months anymore. You're talking weeks. So it's like, damn, all right, I want an SBR. I want to, and that's what I think is super cool about supersonic 8.6, especially because like right now it's like very much in the early stage of bullet development. So all the supersonic projectiles people are using are just kind of repurposed, 338 barrel or bullets, where it's like it's not even the super bullets don't have good ogives. They're not high BC. Because they weren't intended for that. They were those bullets in their original form were designed to go fast as fuck.
Yeah.
So now, like, if you think about it in moderate terms, I bet in a couple of years, I know Discrete Ballistics is working on a 200 grain projectile that's going to be higher BC, but it's like, damn, like, okay, the way that I hunt, 500 and in with a high BC 200 grain projectile out of a 12-inch 8.6 fix, like that can check all those boxes.
Yeah.
In a way that's like, and it weighs with an optic, maybe 7 pounds,
right?
Yeah. Maybe 8 with a suppressor and like a good optic, like that's unmatched. Like it's so hard to get a hunting rifle if you want something that actually can shoot, that you can enjoy shooting from like a bullet profile perspective, like where it's not just like 5 rounds and done. like having that in a way that I can shoot, like I can go to the range or go shoot like 100 rounds. That's insanely cool to me.
Yeah.
That's first cool. Not only is it second cool, it's first cool.
Yeah.
And no one else is doing that. And I think that like it'll be interesting. I'd be shocked if in 5 years, like, you know, everyone's like, all right, Sammy Twist is 1-7 or 1-8. It's like, well, for what barrel length? You know, because those bullets were designed, or that round was designed around a 24-inch barrel. Mm-hmm. But what if you're talking 14.5? What if you're talking 16? What if you're talking 12.5? Like, if you're trying to maintain bullet stability, you need to increase twist rate. So I think that, you know, people will think about bullets and barrel lengths different. And the only people I really see even flirting with that is really Q. On a commercially viable perspective, you know, like they're pushing and to me that's super cool. And it's not even like I'm not like the biggest subsonic guy, obviously, but I mean, I think it's super cool. I think the applications for it are much larger than just subsonic.
Right.
And I think that's going to change shit. And it's cool to see, you know?
Yeah. For me, it's wild that it's taken so long, or that it hasn't caught on as fast, because it's not something that's out of this world to do. It's not overwhelmingly hard. I mean, yeah, you got to retool, like you got to do a little bit to spin fast, but like fast twist has been around since, I mean, before 300 blackout, but like in the US, like a popular commercially available thing, it's been around since 300 blackout was done. And so the fact that companies haven't done it, granted, it takes time, it takes money, whatever, but it is surprising that it's taken so long. And I do agree with you. I think it's going to take a few years, but yeah, I mean,
it's just dogma, you know?
Yeah.
It's dogma. But
it's just easier to repeat the same process than it is to come up with a new one.
Yeah. Like we talked about it at lunch. Like if you have a bunch of money and you have your degree and whatever, and you're a gunsmith and you go, I want to be a gun company, you can build ARs that already exist, mil-spec ARs with quality parts, and it's going to print you money. You don't have to think outside the box, and you're going to do okay. When you start thinking outside the box, that takes the majority of the budget and the money that Q makes goes into the engineers. It goes into not just
only
their
that,
salaries,
it's not like a fun process.
Right, yeah.
In terms of being someone like, you don't make the money if you come up with the idea, because you're trying to swim upstream, you know?
Right. Our trigger, the trigger that's in your Honey Badger, like, and even the trigger that's in the fix, like we talked about the 45-degree bolt selector lever, whatever. He did drop tests every day for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Same thing, like to the point where he broke the floor at our old facility. They had to like re-pour like every day for a year, just hoisting a gun up, dropping it, and recording it on high speed. Like, not glamorous, not fun. Yeah. It's the same shit every day, but it's the right way. And through doing all that, he passed all of the drop tests he could find. Like, that trigger is the safest trigger. Like, and he did it the right way the first time, which a lot of companies either don't care to do or don't have the means to do it. And I think it's a huge point of contention with people, because some of our projects take a lot of time to come out. Like the boombox, if you ask Kevin, he would say, it should have come out a year ago. But as we use it, or as the engineers discover more and more, there's things they end up wanting to change, because this isn't SIG. They're not going to give it to you and be like, all right, here's the gun. You're going to love Gen 3. Like, it's not like that. We'll give it to you when it's right. And that's a point of contention. And I do think that other companies aren't willing to spend the money or the time. And sometimes they just don't have the bandwidth or the resources. Realistically, there are a lot of companies that don't have degreed engineers. I think per capita, our company has the highest volume of degreed engineers in the company, just based on size, obviously. So yeah, I don't know. I think that the way that you look at it is very on track with how we do things, for sure. Everything is function based. Like, if we didn't have industrial engineers that know how to make things look good or put them in the right spot, I'm sure we would come up with the ugliest guns in the world, but they would be
super functional. Yeah. And I mean, that I think is cool. Like, ultimately people are drawn to guns because they're functional, you know? Like, a Glock isn't a beautiful gun, but it is the most functional handgun. And there's something very eloquent about that.
Yeah.
And, I think that it's easy to kind of lose sight on the short term of what is actually functional and what is new. And it's, you get lost in the sauce, you get lost in the rhetoric, there's, Kevin's obviously kind of like a caustic character. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but he's like very kind of provocative.
Very polarizing as well.
Yeah. But I think like in the long run, history will view him much better than kind of as a contribution to the guns and shooting as any isolated moment,
Yeah, I agree.
And I think you guys make really cool stuff. Functional stuff. First cool,
Yeah.
And there's some second cool associated with it too, you know?
Yeah.
Like best case scenario, you get a little bit of both. Yeah, I mean it's I think it's you gotta understand what you want a rifle to do and then work back from there. And most people don't necessarily do that, They're like, shit, this thing's super fun to shoot. And it's like, yeah, but is it useful?
Right. I mean, that's like that Smith & Wesson, the Jerry Miculek gun that's coming out. It's like an 8-shot 9mm, and people are going to buy it. And they're like, yeah, Jerry shoots it super fast. And it's like, but do you shoot it super fast? Like, I don't know if you necessarily, like, Jerry's the dude, but it's like, are you Jerry or are you not Jerry? Like,
yeah, I was at the range probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and there's this old timer like at the booth next to me. We're just zeroing rifles at 100 yards, and he had this like dead nuts accurate 6BR or 6 GT or something.
yeah.
And but the barrel was like a solid steel pipe.
Yeah, just bar stock with a hole in it.
So it's like, yeah, if you want to just put it on the bench and shoot a dime sized group at 100 yards, sick.
Yeah, some dudes get off on that.
Yeah, that's what you want to do. Why not make it super heavy?
Right.
It's going to be better for that probably.
Yeah. And that's like the cool thing about guns is there's room for that and there's room for everyone else, to kind of like find what they're really into.
Yeah. I think that like, that's what like really kind of inspires me for what we do. And it's like, man, maybe you don't like some of the stuff that we make, like our shirts, our merch and stuff. It's not for everybody, but it's stuff we like to make. So I'm going to keep exploring that as long as I can.
Yeah, being authentic is only going to carry you farther and farther.
Yeah.
And I think from like a functional perspective, it's like if you own a gun, like it's so funny to me that people have all these guns that they just don't even know what the fuck their trajectories
have no
are.
idea.
They have zero clue. And it's like, okay, at that point, you might as well be collecting fucking baseball cards.
Dude, I'm going to call out my buddy real quick. Like he has all these, get into shooting subs, has thermal, stuff like that. Man, I need a chronograph. Yeah, no fucking shit, dude.
Yeah.
You're shooting subs at distance, dude. That thing's dropping like a rock.
Yeah. And I think that, but I'm not trying to yuck their yum.
No,
like they're getting something out of it. It's like I have a very specific idea in my head of what makes sense. Cause like, I think that like ultimately guns are really functional, whether your function is kind of like some preservation of civil liberties or hunting, and it's like you want to have something that is the most efficient at doing that. And there's something kind of aesthetically beautiful about having something that does that the best, you know? And that's what I'm drawn to. And I think it's funny to describe that in a way that is unexpected, and that's like what Walter tries to do.
Yeah.
But from a functional perspective, I think that there's like this idea of like collecting, and I'm not a gun collector.
Right.
Like, I have a bunch of guns, probably have more, I have a shitload of guns, but it's not because I'm like, oh man, like this is like, there's only a couple guns that I have, like MP5 SD, where I'm like, all right, this is like my shit. I need this. I wanted it since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
I don't care if there's a better freaking mousetrap now. But most of the guns, I'm like, oh, this is like my hunting rifle, or this is some rifle this is like I only own Glock handguns. Literally, I do not own a gun that's not a Glock because I'm like, if I want a handgun, I need it to be. It's a functional thing. You know?
Same.
And I've owned other guns, like I've shot a bunch of 2011s, and I'm like, dude, that shit. Like history is not going to remember 2011s well. Mark my words. You know, like, if you are actually shooting USPSA. go tell me how many times. Go to a USPSA match and watch how many people 2011 mags break. And they lose because they have a malfunction. Their $80 mags don't work right. Like, no, like if you look at people on the top of USPSA, they're not shooting 2011s. You know, they're shooting Glocks. Those people, and it's like the Indian, not the arrow kind of situation. But
yeah, and we're big proponents of that. Like we make products for people to use their rifles,
right?
So
regardless of what they have, use it.
Yeah, I mean, like we have a bunch of different stuff because we get the opportunity to like play with cool shit and figure out what we like and what we don't. But ultimately, the way we're doing that is like by putting it to the test,
right?
So
yeah, I mean, I think that encouraging people to go actually shoot their guns and figuring out what that does. Everyone should know that. Everyone should have a rifle that's doped. Like when people have rifles that aren't zeroed, I'm like, dude, I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
But like, come on, man.
Yeah. Do you guys either of you have any, it doesn't even need to be necessarily recent, but purchases where based on all you've been doing, like you've been shooting so much, you've been getting all this data, and then you hear about this one gun, you get that gun thinking like, oh, this is based on everything I know, this next gun is going to take me to another level. And then you got that gun and you were severely disappointed with it. Do you have any of those that you can think of?
I mean, the last gun that I had that I was like, all right, this was literally probably a 2011.
Yeah.
And I bought 4 years ago. And I remember shooting it on the clock. And sure, like I could shoot it faster. My splits were faster. But then looking at my scores, I was like, shit.
Yeah.
Fuck, I'm the problem.
Yeah.
This gun is, I'm not buying myself out of this hole, you know?
Yeah, and that was like years ago too. And I mean, I relate to that, but we both consume a lot of information around this stuff, whether it's like content or like actually reading a book on stuff. Yeah. Like we do some of that. Not as much as I'd like, but
yeah, I guess. And I haven't bought a gun in a while.
Usually we're pretty informed purchasers though. Like I feel like, I mean, just because it's easy, the internet is like, just makes it so easy.
I get super excited about I get more like, I'm like a bit of more of a nerd where like the stuff that I get really excited. The last time I bought something where I was like, all right, this is actually insanely sick. And I know you guys kind of shit on it. It's 6-arc, but I think 6-arc is super cool. If you're using it in a a gas gun.
Yes.
It gives you literally 98% of the performance of a large frame gas gun. Yeah. In terms of you're actually trying to hit stuff.
Kevin made a video, I mean, kind of going back on his word. I think it's titled like I'm a hypocrite or something like that. And he understands, like, we all do too. Like in theory, like for especially
at least I wanted to hate 6-arc, by the way. Like I was like, oh man, it's just kind of like whatever version of 6.5 Grendel. But yeah,
we had 6.5 Grendel at first,
right?
And it was really cool.
Have you messed with 6 Max at all? People always ask us that. I think
6 Max that's one of those things that it's like if you actually look at what it's doing,
right?
It's not a good case design, and I think this is like a hill I will die on. Is that like that rifle that is not designed to carry a big bullet? Yes, it can shoot 105 grain bullets, but in order to seat that bullet, you need to seat the bullet so far down in the case that you have inconsistent powder burn, and the fastest or the most consistent SDs they can get, as advertised from whoever's making the ammo, is 23 in the low 20s, and if you actually shoot far, that is dog shit. Like you won't be able to hit anything. Do I think the rifle that round is probably pretty efficient at shooting lighter bullets? It's like, yes, it has more case capacity than than the 5.56. Yeah. So if you're shooting like lighter bullets in the realm of it that are compared to what you can shoot out of a 5.56, it's gonna be more efficient and have from a barrel length gonna have better velocity. And I think it's probably pretty good at that. But don't tell me for a second that it's going to be better at long range, because it's not. Like, look at the SDs. And anyone that actually shot far will be like, damn, okay, I can shoot one thing that has an SD of low teens or single digits, or I can shoot something that has an SD of 23. Like, you're not, like, it's just, it's not even the same ballpark, you know?
Yeah, that's something we get a lot with 375 Raptor versus 8.6, and it's like, 375 Raptor it's a killing round. It's a great round, but people don't think about their delivery system. Like it needs to go. I mean, we built this to go in one of the most common delivery systems on the market, the SR25 magazine. Yeah. And at a 375 Raptor, because of the ogive of the bullet on those little ridges inside the magazine, they start getting pushed because of the ogive of the bullet. And so they're not going to feed reliably in that out of that magazine. And maybe yours will. Like, you might build one and yours has never had a problem, but build 20 of them, build 30 of them. How many of them feed reliably? So sure, it's people that want to try to shit on 8.6. They're probably the same people that shit on 300 Blackout and now own 7 of them or whatever. But it's like, we've said it a million times. Nothing is free in Waterworld. Like, 375 might kill XYZ better than 8.6 does, the 375 Raptor, but like,
yeah, and like I got in some arguments with some people on Instagram talking about 6 Max, and the way they were describing it and defending it were counter to Newtonian physics, where they're like, it's freaking less recoil, it's faster, it's more energy, it's burns cleaner. I'm like, dude, you're literally using the same projectile,
right,
the same powder and the same primers, and you're trying to tell me there's a difference in freaking soot in your gun? Like, that is law of conservation of mass. Like, there's going to be the same shit. Like, you're not going to and it recoils less. I'm like, okay, so you're not using a science-based argument. This is purely dogmatic, which is cool, which you're entitled to your same decision.
And
but this is no different than debating religion, because
right.
it's just not going to be.
Yeah.
And ultimately what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to hit shit farther than I can with 5.56.
Right.
And with less recoil than a 6.5 Creedmoor. So that's going to be where that conversation goes, you know?
Yeah.
And you can use, a small frame with.
Right, exactly. Cool. Yeah, that's like, I said it the other day, and Kevin said it too, where it's like, 6-arc's cool. Like, 6 Creedmoor is better in every way, shape, or form. But again, a different delivery system.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
and
also
same. If you think about it from the perspective of reloading, it's like, the sweet thing about 6-arc from a reloading perspective is that you use small rifle primers, and you can use, it's more efficient from a powder perspective. So if you're trying to achieve, and it gets back to the thing of like, how much velocity do you need? How much energy on target do you need? And for most people, I think 6-arc will do a lot of what they're trying to do.
You killed a deer with one last fall.
Yeah, I shot
right?
a deer last fall with it out of 14.5 barrel. Like, it was 107 or 193 pound deer. Dropped it, 315 yards. It's really good at that. But I mean, is 6 Creedmoor better from a trajectory perspective and from a wind bucking perspective based off of having additional velocity? Yeah, probably is. But I can also reload it with small rifle primers.
Right.
That's sick.
And you can hot rod them too. Like, no one's saying you can't, depending on your delivery system again. Like,
At our local stores, small rifle primers are still like on the shelves. We have everywhere. We have probably close to 10,000 of them.
Yeah.
So,
and that's a world that I'm not super familiar with. Like, we went to good old Kidder Trading Post yesterday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we were looking at all the components.
No large rifle primers there.
Right. And I mean, even like powder prices, like, I personally, I know Ethan and like the engineers, those are the only dudes I know in my life that at least that live around here that reload. Like, it's not super huge, at least in the circle that I'm around, which is wild. But so that's a whole world. And I only know the bare minimum of it. Like,
we're still learning it too. We're pretty students. New at it. Yeah. It's a complicated process.
Yeah.
That gets easier with repetition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're looking from like an autonomy perspective, it's like, oh man, I can reload, I can stock up.
Yeah.
Like, I actually bought my first press, years before I started using it.
Yeah.
But I was just like, damn, dude, like, I can make my own bullets if I have brass and components.
Yeah. The idea of it is amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, I don't know enough about it where I think I conflate it with, like, I'm big into fly fishing, where it's like a lot of people will try to convince themselves, if I just tie flies, it'll save me money in the long run. It absolutely does not.
Yeah, like, you won't save any money reloading. In fact, you'll probably spend more, but you will shoot more.
Right.
Which is tight.
Like, that ability, that little bit of autonomy to, maybe I'll hot rod this a little bit and see what I can get.
Yeah.
Or like, and not necessarily just to figure it out, but it's like, I know with this case, with this projectile, I can add another 150 feet per second, and it's only going to be better. And that's pretty cool. I do like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one thing that's super exciting to me about bolt action rifles specifically, is that and you know this, like if you're trying to get a gas gun to run reliably, you need very consistent, specific amounts of gas going through the gas tube. But with a bolt action rifle, it's like, all right,
Yeah.
what do you want to do with it?
As long as it comes out the end, you're good.
And as long as it doesn't like, you know, as long as you don't you load within SAMI spec or reason,
Right.
like you can get the bullet to do stuff. And there's also all sorts of different powders. You know, like right now I'm super excited about these shorter barreled, you know, kind of like I'm super excited to reload for 8.6 supers. Yeah. And there's a bunch of different powders you can use. And also like I'm excited to experiment. Like I want to throw a 12.5 inch 6.5 Creedmoor barrel in my fix and mess with twist rates and powders, because you can use faster burning powders to, you know, really get good velocities. And it's just like you can really experiment with that in ways that you can't with a gas gun.
Yeah. And I mean, even if you were to throw a 16-inch 6.5, but the barrel profile was a lot slimmer. Like, I mean, that Kuiu gun that we
super light,
that one, like, and that's the thinnest profile barrel, like the short handguard. Like, there's little things you can do to experiment, even with the system itself, especially with a system like this where it's basically one tool, with the exception of a barrel nut.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you use the fixed tool, it's one tool, but it's so easy for you to, in the same day, if you had 3 barrels made and assuming they all have the extensions, you just drop and figure out what you like.
Yeah. And that's super cool. And like, to me, like I'm a nerd, you know, like that is super exciting to me. Some other people are into other things, you know, like I think that the idea of hot rodding is super cool to me. Whether it's cars or kind of anything, is you're like, oh yeah, my use case is slightly different from anyone else's, and I want to build the best thing to do this very specific thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's first cool to me. And
first
second
cool.
cool.
And second cool, yeah, a little bit of both. I guess so. You don't have to divulge, I guess, anything or everything or whatever, but where I know right now, Walter's is kind of like a fun thing that for you specifically that you do. What do you hope to see in the future with Walter, or what do you plan on the future being for the whole Walter thing?
I mean, we're working on a bag. We've been working on it for like 6 months. That is, you know, I think specific to the way we try to shoot, that I think will be super useful.
A bag, as in like a shooting bag or a carrying rifle? Yeah.
A shooting bag, yeah. We'll show you a video offline.
Yeah.
You know, in general, like we got redesigned shooting cards where I want to start selling barrels. I think that people kind of think about barrels traditionally wrong in terms of like equating accuracy with length and whatnot. You know, it's like, oh no, the most accurate barrels are going to be stiffer, shorter barrels. You know, I think, you know, I'm interested. I'm a full believer in the idea of faster twist rates, and I think, you know, we've already talked about this, but I think in 5 years, most people are going to be shooting rifles with different twist rates than they're shooting right now.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to get in on that. I think it's going to be, you know, especially if you're actually trying to kill shit, like,
right.
It's going to be per barrel length and, you know, powder and everything. It's like you're going to have more, and you're going to translate more energy just based off of how, I mean, you know, like a bullet slows down a lot faster traveling laterally than it does spinning.
Right, rotationally.
Yeah, and that's just based off of aerodynamics. And if you retain that, it's easy. So if you're trying to retain energy on target, storing more energy in rotational energy is just going to translate better, whether that's supersonic or subsonic.
Right. And it's hard to quantify that for a lot of people. It's
hard to quantify, especially because, like, getting back to the dogma thing where it's just like, well, we've always used, you know, energy on target in terms of foot-pounds of energy as a threshold for hunting. And it's like, well, if that was truly the case, then how do you explain people killing moose with bows and arrows?
Right.
Because that thing's only going 300 feet per second. Yeah. And sure, it weighs more, but that will kill shit dead, you know? So it's like there's different I think, you know, it's just based off of what metric you use, you know? And I imagine that as science catches up to manufacturing and like bullet and rifle technology, there will be ways to quantify that. But
Yeah.
I think that there's a discrepancy now. Yeah. And I think that, there's a bunch of different, who knows? I just want to have, I want to have fun with Walter, and I think I want to have it be something that Donnie and I enjoy doing, It's like good for us and checks the boxes we need to check.
Yeah.
But I also think that there's a big opportunity from a functional perspective. I think it's cool seeing that Q's on a similar program in terms of what they are trying to get. They're trying to build things for solutions, Obviously, a lot of those solutions are military based, and I think that's super cool. The things that I want to talk about, or that I'm interested in, are more just based off of like civilians,
right,
in terms of like, oh damn, this is super functional for me as a hunter, and realistic for me as someone who believes in civil liberties.
Yeah, and I think you guys are also doing a good job at educating without putting yourself on a pedestal or a high horse. I think
I'm wrong all the time.
Oh, I think I think you do a good job of explaining yourselves from the ground level, from the same level as everybody else, and being like, hey, and it's very evident that what you're saying is coming from a place of, we're not just making this shit up. Like, we're doing it, we're recording it, and we're showing you what I'm telling you is a reality.
Long before I was making content about shooting, I was spending a ton of time shooting guns with people that knew what they were doing,
Mm-hmm.
And this shit didn't come out of a vacuum,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we've only been doing this thing for 15 months, I think.
Yeah, it's
like our brand, the business,
Yeah, the business, yeah. Yeah, exactly, the business. But like, we've both enjoyed shooting for a long time before that, and it's really cool to like see the support for like the products that we make, whether it be like the merch, like that's what we started with.
Right.
We started with it because we thought it was funny, and like the functional product started with our homework dope stickers, because we were both taping our dope to our guns, and
our engineers make little bracelets with paper that they see.
Yeah, and guys wear quarterback sleeves and stuff.
Right,
and it's like, there's more than one way to skin a cat. I like the way that we do it, but it's just constantly evolving. There's constantly more shit that I'm learning about. I've never I worked an admin office job until December 31st of 2023. So
hell yeah,
like less than 6 months, and like I've never been self-employed. Always had an employer. So it's
figuring it out.
Always figuring it out.
But you're doing shit that you care about and that you want to do, and
totally.
And in turn, I think it's inspiring other people and it's educating people, which is, in my opinion, one of the most important things.
Yeah, and I'm having so much fun with it. Like, this is wild. Like, just being out here and hanging with you guys. Like, I wasn't doing this off my own personal shooting Instagram. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's cool. I don't know. I think it was very evident that kind of your ethos fits within, like looking through the mall cop Vietnam veteran, the kind of the bones of it all, that ethos, I think very much coincides with what we're doing. And I think we're on a very similar wavelength. I think the way that we explain it is a little more crass and maybe with some crazier numbers or something. I say more crass, but not really. We just have.
No, I mean, our Walter is a big fan of profanity.
That's true.
And of fucked up metaphor. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's our bread and butter, and I think that like ultimately shooting is really fun. I get a lot of, when I'm shooting, I'm not thinking about anything else,
Yeah.
That's very rare.
You're trying to solve the problem at hand.
Yeah. And I think that there's a million ways to do that and to achieve that. And for me, shooting is something that does that. And hunting is something that gives me that too, So if you don't, I encourage people to go try that, and if that scratches their itch too, that's fucking awesome,
Yeah. Right on. Is there anything either of you feel like, now that you have this massive Q platform right now, that you want people to know or anything, or at the very least, like, where can everyone find you? Because I think outside of your social media, the newsletter is a super.
Yeah, I think that we're super into the newsletter.
You can just sign up for that on our website.
Yep.
Like even if you don't have Instagram, it's waltersobchecksecurity.com. And you can sign up for the newsletters on there.
Yeah. And it's very much like I'm on there. It's very much not spammy. There's no spam bullshit. It's
we're
just
not necessarily a lot more like we don't even try to sell shit and probably
Yeah.
like
Well, it's a Substack too,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Right.
that's what it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's basically just like a thing that you learned in the last 2 weeks. You're just sharing with the
where
person.
we're at, what we're working on.
Yeah.
And it's not like stuff that we have it for 2 weeks, obviously, and then we share
No,
it with
yeah.
people. It's, some of it's like ideas that I feel like we've been cooking on for a while and then just finally find a lens to be able to spit it out. But yeah.
And you just started a YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, we're making YouTubes, but don't expect one once a week. I mean,
No tabletops.
Yeah,
Right.
no tabletops.
Yeah, a different thing just in general, which is good. It's refreshing. It's more of that, I think, showing the creative side and showing the new generation of gun guys. I think it's cool to do different shit.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, if there's nothing else.
When's Nothing Fancy coming to Q, dude?
I don't know. I don't know if
Dude.
he probably likes Q. I don't know. Maybe
I bet he
not.
does.
I don't
Yeah,
know. We'll have to reach out.
He's a character, dude. I used to watch his videos religiously.
His-
I still subscribe and watch some of them, but yeah.
His best review is on the Sig Cross that just starts going off without
Dude, actually, he's a big Spyderco guy.
Oh hell yeah!
I've carried a Spyderco.
What happened to the
because of
Sig
Nothing
Cross
Fancy.
review?
It was slam firing. It wasn't hang firing. It was every time he would drop every time he dropped the bullet, it would fire on him.
Holy shit! Dude,
he
that's so
caused a
wild.
whole recall for the Sig Cross.
That's
damn.
amazing.
It's crazy. And he's like, so, I mean, I would be too if I fucking slam fired my gun. He's like, holy shit, like so shocked.
Yeah.
I think it's
I
on a
gotta
tripod.
watch that. I bet
It's-
that's hilarious to
it's
watch him
super
do that.
good, yeah. And he just like keeps replicating it, dude, just burying them. It was so bad.
Yeah, I might keep it, dude. That might be kind of cool. It's like just dropping
Yeah.
your bolt.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, getting your target lined up and dropping
That was
the
so
bolt.
good because like when they came out with the Cross, like we don't give a shit, but it was just so like to be like it was designed from the ground up. We're like, yeah, dude, if the ground was made of fixes, like we know you have 2 of our guns over there. Like,
Yeah.
you didn't just think of that design and you still didn't do it right. So like, obviously when it came out and then to see Nothing Fancy, who's the OG, to see he was like the first person that caught it hang fire, slam firing. We're like, this could not have been written better.
That's
Damn.
rough, dude.
Yeah. They've since fixed it for the money. It's a decent gun, but it's not the fix.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys coming out here and
Dude, thank
Yeah,
you so
thanks.
much
We got to
for
shoot a
little bit.
having us.
I hope you learned about the Revolutionary War and
Yeah.
which side won or which side was the best guy.
Dude,
or
I'm not
whatever.
so sure anymore.
Yeah, dude. Well, we just walked through Portsmouth yesterday, and they had that like entire British store. Or whatever.
Yeah.
with
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's strange.
It's New England, bro.
New England.
Yeah,
dude.
yeah.
Go home.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that's right. Well, yeah, thanks for coming out, and hopefully, I think the people will learn some stuff. And yeah, so your Instagram is Walter Sobchak Security,
Yep.
and then your
Our website is waltersobchecksecurity.com.
perfect. And what's your YouTube channel?
I think the same.
I think the same, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
There will be links somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Right on.
Cool.
Shout out MySpace.